All right. Hey, Jazib. Thank you for coming on to the show. Excited to have you here. Why don't you give us a quick introduction on what you're working on?
Sure. Hey, Justin. Great to be on. Uh, I am working on Scouty. He's like 40 for events. And basically, if you don't know what 40 is, 40 helps you, connect to people that you want to connect to for whatever purpose. So let's say you're looking for an investor, 40 might help you with that. But Scouty, the belief behind it is that all of those introductions, all of those connections are a lot better in person. And so he's just like a friend on WhatsApp that helps you find whatever events you want to go to. We're also getting into things like, hey, matchmaking people at events. So who should meet who? You know, should be forum groups between people with like complementary things, things like that. So anything events related, and then um, and then later, Scouty will also be like the platform for uh, agents to host events on their own without human involvement. So that's kind of like the big picture.
Interesting. And how long have you been working on this for?
About 5 months. So started in January. That's when I um, did like the very first, I guess, validation for it. And so I, went around, asked people about the idea. Um, a lot of them, had like very positive feedback and they wanted it. Someone gave me a very small deposit for it as well. It didn't exist, but they were like, they were giving me some money for it. So yeah, that's when I started building.
Wow. Um, that's pretty rare for people to give you money up front for something. Again, based on an idea too. Was that as an investor or as a user?
As a user.
Okay, so they prepaid before you even built it.
Yeah, it was like a lot of money. It was only a small amount, but it
It's
was
still
signal.
a big deal.
Yeah,
Um, Most founders, I mean, never make any revenue, period, right? You made some before you even launched.
right.
Um,
Yeah,
so okay, that's that's good that you got that. There is something that I guess you typically want to bring up early on, and there's I think a book about this called the Mom Test. I believe it's about. I've never personally read it, but it's this concept in the startup space where every person you tell your idea to is going to say like, "Wow, that's amazing. That's great." Because no one really likes kind of adversity up front. Um, so it's generally can be very tough to get real feedback before you launched, right? Generally, the real feedback is when you say, give me money for this product. And if they are unwilling to give you money, that's a sign that, okay, they don't actually like your idea. They were kind of just being nice. Um, so it's interesting is there's a lot of kind of typical ways that founders will be recommended to make sure that they don't end up in this trap of building something that everyone just says sounds great, but then they never actually use. And one of the ways to do that is you just ask for money up front. Be like, oh, cool, pay me. I'll give you a year free when I launch. And then if they say no, then like, okay, they don't actually like what you're building. Um, they just wanted to say things sound great. Um, so yeah, that's something to note.
yeah.
So
I
it's great that you got actual payment for that.
Yeah, for sure. I've had this experience before, so I kind of knew that I have to I have to get, some better signal than just like asking people.
Nice.
Um, because you're exactly right. People are very nice. They don't wanna, say no to you. And uh like there's multiple layers that you have to sort of do to try and get behind the niceness and like actually find out if people want it or not. Um, my first startup, I also kind of just like, went with like very little user feedback and not with, deposits. Uh, and I realized the hard way that, that user or, especially if it's like friends or family, it's not it's not very valuable feedback. And so it can save months and months of time if you try and get a better signal. So like the layers that I talked about, one layer is starting off with really encouraging them to be as honest as possible, um, and try and break down their layer of being nice to you, and like tell them, hey, this is yeah, if I spend months on this, that's like months of time that I could waste. So like, I need you to be as honest as possible. The second layer is to ask them to pay if they're in the target audience, and hopefully you are talking to people who are in the right audience. And then the third layer, I think, is um, and this is much easier now, so like get a very very basic MVP out as quickly as possible, and then see if people use it or pay for it,
Mhm.
um, and if they're complaining about it. So, YC has this infamous line, "Make something people want." But now it's like I think now people are starting to think about it in terms of make something people complain about.
Yes, I think it's great, a great sign if people are complaining about your product.
Right.
Yeah, it's such a powerful sign that they really want it, and it's very useful to you as a founder too, because you take their complaints and then start building off of them to solve those complaints.
Yeah,
Really great
exactly.
first step. You get something super tailored out that's good enough to start getting people complaining about it, and then you use those complaints to build your whole product roadmap.
Right, exactly. I read about this in a post yesterday as well. Um, somebody made somebody just like they sign up to a lot of different B2B SaaS products. And so they found that often a lot of them ask very similar questions about, hey, what's your company? What does your company do? What's the logo of the company, the name, stuff like that. And so they kind of didn't like this, and they built something very, very simple to um, pull that data from like the company's website that the person provides and automatically fill in those fields. And then at first, like not a lot of people, were using it, and it was just like a thing on the side, I guess. And then they and then like a few people were using it, but then they were complaining about it, and they started building it a little bit more, and then apparently all of a sudden there were like enterprises using this application as well. It's like very
Mhm.
basic application, or at least started off
Yeah.
as very very
Um,
basic. But yeah, people were that early signal was that, those people that were using it were really complaining about it and sending emails that, "Hey, this breaks or that breaks," all of that stuff, and it's, like, such a simple thing, such a small value add, but now it's making so much money.
yeah. And it's will shock you when you look back at just following the complaints and fixing them, how big and how massive you can get when you do that for a long enough period of time. Um, there's actually something I've been kind of talking about more and more recently. Um, I think our society right now in general, people are over indexing on being nice. I think there's this idea that being nice is like good, right? And being nice is a great thing. And nice people are the best. And if you're mean, you're the worst. I mean, I would argue almost the opposite. Being nice is good for you because when you're nice, people like you and they want to be around you, right? Like to me, being nice is an inherently selfish thing that you do for yourself. When you're mean though, that's difficult, right? It's hard to actually tell people stuff that they don't want to hear, and it's hard to kind of create friction instead of just going with the flow. But usually a lot of success and greatness and a lot of strength that people develop for themselves and a lot of the ways that people grow as people is all through meanness. So I think it's necessary. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
I think there's a lot of, bullshit advice out there
mhm,
based on, like, people, uh, just, like, being nice and then turning it into advice, and then
mhm,
other people follow it, and, uh and it turns out to be not such a great thing.
yeah. Um, I mean, like one example is with hiring, right? You've probably heard the saying hire slow, fire fast. You have to be pretty ruthless with the type of people that you add to your team as a founder. Um, I think a lot of people from outside of the startup space, they really think it's just like you have a good idea and then everything just blows up around you and you find a ton of success. But really it's more the opposite. You start with some good idea, or you make some good product, but then it's just mountains of grueling, really difficult work, executed by exceptional people that actually builds massive companies. So you need to be, again, like pretty careful with who you're actually bringing onto your team, because if they're not in that kind of small group of people who can really positively contribute to a startup, particularly an early stage startup, things probably won't go very well.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
so
right.
so you did mention that you've built some other startups before. So I'd love for you to tell us more about what your history in the startup space looks like.
Sure. So, um, my first one was basically after finishing grad school. Um, I immediately, I just like I believed that this was the time for me to take risks. And so immediately went into startups. I did some. I had a lot of ideas written down. And so I wasn't sure, which one to pursue. I'd been writing down ideas since I was 17 or 18. Because I always like dreamed of building my own startup. Um, and so by this point, there were probably like 100 ideas written down. Uh, and so I was going through some of them, discussing them with people, and then this one pain point came up that seemed like some people were like very passionate about, and like was like a real pain point for people. And I dug into it, and it was like there were news stories about it as well, and there were essentially like there was real pain being felt, and that was tenants not paying rent to landlords, especially in Ontario, um, and Canada in general. And so this was like it felt like a obvious problem. Like, hey, yeah, this is this is something that is like a real problem. If someone doesn't pay you rent, um, you still have to pay your mortgage if you have a mortgage on the house. You have so many other bills, and like you're missing thousands of dollars essentially. And so you want to do everything you can to protect against that. And so that solving that problem was the first startup. Um, it went through several iterations because the first sort of solution was like a naive solution that depended on the network effect working in order for it to actually provide any value. So we were trying to replace credit histories altogether because they were not very good for predicting, outcomes of like a rental, and like a tenant, whether they're going to pay rent or not. Um, but there were a lot of additional sort of things attached to it as well, because like paying rent was one thing, but also, there were tenants that would cause, property damages, um, and a lot of other issues. So we were trying to build the uh, the credit history, but for the rental history, and it just like never. As soon as I went to, it has so many problems with like pricing and stuff, and our ability to price it well, um, and the people's ability to pay, and the fact that 95% of the time tenants do pay rent. Um, that sort of created an issue where like the 1%, the 5%, who have a fear of this problem might be interested in something like this. But then if 95% of people don't use that sort of history, then it's not worth that much. And so anyways, long story short, pivoted several times and ended up just being like a credit checks, background checks tool. But then we did start getting, some clients for it. And at this point, it got to like uh, I guess like four figures or something like that, in revenue per month. And then I was like, okay, maybe I can grow it from here to, whatever amount. But it no longer, it was now a tool that was, competing against a lot of other existing tools as well. It was not, venture investable, I guess. So it was no longer something I could have like funding for and then have a team and then build like a large startup. And so like my entire it was not my original dream of like building the kind of startup that I wanted to build. And and so I was I guess at that point I had to make a decision. Do I like grow this maybe solo and then have it as like a lifestyle business, or do I, pursue something else? And and yeah, a lot of other things also happened along the way, a lot of learning, but I decided to, um, to just like keep it on the side and work on something else. And then after that, yeah, just experimented with a few ideas, but those weren't really something none of those I pursued very seriously and like for a long enough time. Maybe just like, building something and validating it. And then as soon as I saw the first sign this time, that it's not, it's not something the market wants, I immediately, scrapped those ideas. And for my first lesson, didn't spend a lot of time building them. But anyways, that first startup still exists on the side. And then eventually I found Scouty, which, which I just mentioned had like very good initial feedback for initial results, and then started building that. And also, at that point, right before building Scouty, I was also thinking about my long term sort of vision for what the world would look like, and building a hypothesis for it. Before startups, I had a hypothesis for the world. Maybe we can discuss that later in the podcast, um, but that hypothesis I wasn't as sort of confident in anymore. And so Scouty was based on this new hypothesis of what does the post AI world look like? And a lot of it is based on my belief that, building becomes easier than ever. Um, but the things that matter are, your connections, your ability to distribute in the real world, um, to like get around the fact that the online world is filled with slop. Uh, and And yeah, a few other things related to that hypothesis. Well, yeah, that's
Well,
like a long answer, but the first thought of
no, cool. And you sound like a startup founder, based on that, which is good. I mean, you're building something and you're like, no, I want to build something big and massive, right? Huge vision. And you want it to tie into the world that you see evolving in front of you. Um,
yeah,
that's probably the right mindset to have as a founder. Probably a dumb mindset to have in general, though. It's obviously, for most people, the vast majority of people, just better to build a lifestyle business that makes them money and lets them live in freedom. But if you want to be a founder, you can't have that mindset. Um, so, okay, let's talk quickly then about what you're currently building. Um, so there's this pretty famous or infamous, I guess, YC video on tar pit ideas. Have you seen it or heard of it?
I think so, but refresh my memory because I don't
So
remember.
they talk about how like there's a lot of ideas that they constantly see and they constantly see like, failing, right?
Oh,
They
right,
call these
yes,
tar
yes,
tar pit ideas.
yes,
And for them, the poster child tar pit idea is event discovery.
right,
Which is
yes,
kind of what you're building. So I guess you're familiar with this.
yes, I am, yeah.
Okay, cool. And I speak. I mean, given I guess just a reminder for all the viewers, I'm one of the founders of decimate.world, which is aiming to solve the problem of monopolies in North America. But I also run an event discovery platform, which we have grown to over 7 figures in revenue in our initial city that we launched it in. And now we're scaling it into different cities and different types of events. So we launched it and scaled it to 7 figures just for drop-in volleyball in Toronto. And then we slowly started doing, other cities, other types of volleyball events, et cetera, et cetera. So again, given my status as an event discovery founder, I kind of understand first off how just grueling and excruciatingly difficult this space is, but then also that there can actually be success here. So with that being said, let's kind of dive into your current Scouty platform. So let me. Okay, I have your website up on my end. Tell Scouty what you're into. He'll text you when it's on. Okay. So I'd assume that you scrape other websites and then find events from them. I'd imagine like Luma and Eventbrite, and then send them to people. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's sort of the idea.
Okay, cool. How many people do you have using your platform?
So far about 630.
630. That's pretty good for 5 months. Uh, is it all free for the most part?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
There's no paid plan yet.
Okay.
The
I do
entire
see
time.
you have a paid plan on your website. Is that just like you're setting it up still?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. That's fine. Are your costs bad with your current customers, or is it like all manageable?
So like the per user cost is pretty manageable. Um, and then like there's a certain I guess amount of fixed costs. Um, that just like depends on how many sources we're checking, how frequently we're checking them, and how many cities we're in, stuff like that. That cost is a little bit higher than like is sustainable without revenue, um, and without investor funding. But like for now, it's pretty manageable. Um, and like with like 630 users, um, it's not. I guess like if you divide it by per user, and if you include all the costs, it's not that bad. Um, so I'd say like yeah, manageable right now.
Okay. Um, oh, that's good. It's good that your per user cost isn't bad because you're going to, based on what you've built, I think have a lot of free users.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, we have a lot of free users too. So you have to be able to manage them. So users, I assume, text Scouty on WhatsApp. So it looks like users text Scouty. That's how they join. And then how frequently do they kind of get events? And what does your onboarding process look like?
So the onboarding is pretty simple. You just like tell Scouty, some of the basics, like where are you based, so he can tell you events in that area and like what kind of events you're looking for. Maybe a little bit about yourself. And it really, is like very conversational, very natural. So it depends on the user. There's no like basic set of questions Scouty has to ask in order for him to sort of start scouting for events for a user. Except, I guess, like, he has to sort of know in locations.
Mhm.
Like, even that is, the users can say, "Oh, anywhere." I can travel anywhere. And Scout is, pretty flexible for that as well. But yeah, that's like the onboarding process. And in terms of frequency, and that also, like, is very, user dependent. And so Scouty is encouraged to find out naturally what kind of frequency the user wants to be told about events. And there's like a lot of different users that want different things. So some people want, you know, close to daily or like as soon as something is found, they want to know about it. Some people are like, oh, weekly schedule is good. Yeah, just like check weekly. And if something's there, tell me. If something's not there, whatever. And some people like even there's users that want multiple updates per day. So like there's power users like that want multiple updates per day on a fixed schedule, so like at certain times. And those are things I wasn't anticipating earlier. Um, but based on like those power user requests, ended up building in so Scotty can also like tell you updates at specific times. Um, and then yeah, so like most people, it's on WhatsApp, but for some people, Scouty sends those events over email as well. So WhatsApp has like a ton of issues with deliverability. And so sometimes the message doesn't get delivered, or it gets restricted to certain templates that we have to use. Um, yeah, like WhatsApp's super complicated, email is simple. And so, Scouty is looking for people's emails to make things better for them. But if people don't want to share their emails, then he just talks on and he just sends them on WhatsApp.
Um, so I want to give you then just kind of my thoughts about this space in general. Um, I don't know how much of this would necessarily even be relevant to you, and how much of it you've tried and or whatnot. But yeah, I'll give you my kind of rundown on based on your space, how I typically would build, I guess, a business in this space. So um, first off, you're consumer, and I assume you're AI powered. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you're
And
building.
in terms of consumer, yes, let's continue with that. But it's more like the dynamics are consumer. So it's like it has B2C dynamics, but um, but I eventually seeing it like a B2B thing.
Okay.
That's it.
So, but in general, novel products in the consumer space uh, will generally grow through word of mouth. That's typically how it works. So people try it out and they tell their friends. And that the I guess most recent major example of this would be ChatGPT, right? They just released a chat app, right? And it just blew up overnight through word of mouth because it was an extraordinarily novel consumer product. The more B2B you are, the more sales and marketing matters, right? The less novel you are, the more sales and marketing matters. For you, though, in your space, probably product quality is really what matters the most. Um, and I guess with that being said, usually when I talk with a founder, I usually think they have a good idea, right? Pretty much every founder I speak with, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. The issue is that most founders obviously aren't successful. So what's going on with this? If everyone has good ideas, why isn't everyone successful? And the reason for that is that I think most founders, where they fail is in the product execution stage. So it's something that's really important for founders to realize and to remember is that um, early adopters are their own breed of customers, and they're completely different from middle to late adopters. Have you heard of this concept, or are you familiar with it?
I haven't heard it in detail, but I've briefly heard
Okay.
it.
So essentially, there's this saying, easy come, easy go. And what that means is that by definition, people who are early adopters, they're really easy to get trying your product, but they're really fast to just churn and jump to a different product if it's not super obvious and easy for them. On the flip side, with late adopters, you see very people who are very slow and gradual to adopt products. They need tons of people recommending the product to them. But once they're on the product, they'll really dig into it, right? They'll try all the different bells and whistles. They'll really spend a lot of time using it and seeing like what all the hype is about. So what happens is when most people have a startup idea, they vision the end product and then they try to build that end product and deliver that. But no early adopter is going to use a product that's built for late adopters. So typically to build something for early adopters, simplicity and like ease of use and clarity are really what matters to them. And this, in my opinion, is why the event space and event discovery space is so difficult is inherently it's going to be a complex product where because there's so many different types of events. So inherently you're giving your customers so many different options, and founders just can't find ways to tweak that in such a way that it's usable for early adopters. The reason our platform worked, the reason we could scale it up is because we found a way to tweak it for early adopters, right? By just focusing on drop-in volleyball in Toronto and nothing else. It was super niche early on. So our early adopters could could use it and could understand exactly what it did, and then we could slowly start building on top of that. Um, so that would be my big encouragement in this space is try to simplify as much as you can, especially to launch, make it as easy as possible. I encourage founders, even if they can, to even just pick like a specific event type. It sounds like you kind of do all sorts of events. So maybe try to target it instead a different way, like target it for I don't know, maybe startup founders, right? Like a place for startup founders to find events, or maybe target it for just people in tech, right? If you can really, really narrow it down and make it super obvious for people, I think you'll find you can capture more of those early adopters who then start using it regularly and telling their friends about it. And then their friends come on and start complaining, like, why do you only do tech events? Why don't you do events for people in finance or consulting or whatever? And then you start following that complaint trail towards building your big product.
Right,
Um,
yeah.
I don't know. Any thoughts about that?
Um, I think so, like, that's actually you mentioned targeting it for startup founders. That was the exact, like, market that we actually picked very first. Um, and, like, the first people that I spoke to were founders, and I was like, "This is a product built for founders to find, events where they can meet investors and customers." Um, and, uh, and, like, even the fact that when I was telling people, like, why this idea for me, I was telling people that I just love working with founders. They're, like, the most sort of they're, like, most willing to change, or, like, young people who, like, wanna change stuff, not happy with the status quo people, and coming from, like, that prop tech rental startup, I didn't particularly like being in that industry. Maybe they shouldn't be public, but, like, people were, like, less reluctant to do anything that's novel. Um, super old school, older people. Nothing wrong with older people, but I just, like, didn't enjoy that space, 'cause I had to work with people much older than me. Um, but yeah, like, that was, like, the very first sort of exact market that we picked, and I had very for a very brief period of time, I had somebody who was a sort of a co-founder, and I had to also tell her, like, "Hey, don't, like, just." She got so focused on that founder market, um, even for, like, our investor pitches and stuff, I had to explain to her, like, "This is our initial market. We're gonna expand later." So, especially when it comes to pitching to investors, they wanna see a much bigger sort of market, so we have to sort of frame it in different ways. Um, and then, yeah, once we started getting users, people are like, "Only founder events? Only tech events?" Maybe, do you guys also do other events? And so we're now sort of even now, most of our users are, people in tech. I would say like 80% of the
Mhm.
users are people in tech, um, if not founders. And then a lot of them are people who are in the middle of maybe a career change or something, or investors or founders, like in the startup ecosystem. So not like, big tech people. So, like, it's a very sort of defined group of people even now.
So, well, because from my standpoint, um, looking at your website, if your website told me like event discovery for what, like, we watch the app and we'll give you event, we watch the web and we'll give you event discovery for tech founders or even just people in tech in Toronto. If your website said that on the homepage, I would have signed up when I first went to it. Um, I didn't sign up though, because again, to me, this seems very generic. It seems like a very generic product. And for me to try a very generic product, I probably need my friend to tell me that it's great, right?
Yeah,
I probably won't be convinced by a website. I need a friend to be like, oh, this is amazing. This is what I use it for. And that's when I would actually try it out.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
I think let me see. I haven't checked the website in a while. Let me see what example we have on there. Um, Okay, so yeah, this is an updated example. Um, Before, uh, so this is this group of examples that you see below the hero section. This is based on like my realization that people were starting to use it for very, very niche use cases. And I was like, okay, so we're not actually that good for these yet. But I wanted to make it so that it's sort of, I guess, able to work for these. And I wanted to make it so that, there's like a distribution of people. And like even the people who have like the weirdest sort of needs and wants for events, those are the people that really struggle, I feel, with finding events. Because for them the signal to noise ratio is so low. And so making that experience better for those people was like something I sort of wanted to do as I guess the founder. But you're right. This is now sort of reducing the messaging. The new website is reducing the messaging that we previously had, which was a single example of, I believe, a founder in a specific industry looking to meet investors.
So you're
And
you're referring to this example here.
yeah, I'm referring to this one. So now it's like a weird
So,
one, right? But
well, I
before
don't
it was
think
something very generic.
I mean, I don't think most people will even make it this far. My own experience with this first time I looked at it is, I'm like, okay, so watches the events and text you them. And then I read niche, weird, professional, social, whatever. And I just thought, I mean, that sounds very unfocused, and I didn't sign up.
Right.
Um, because again, to get me as an early adopter, like you have to show me that you're extremely tailored to me early on. That's what it takes.
Yeah.
And I mean, you would be surprised how far you could take a niche community. I mean, we took drop in volleyball in just Toronto to over seven figures as a business and in revenue, right?
Yeah. It's pretty impressive.
Um, yeah, and so going all in on a single community and spend longer working on it than you think you have to, right? Be be a bit of the dick who's kind of saying no to customers and saying, sorry, we don't do that right now, but it's on um it's on the radar. And I mean, that's obviously very hard to do. And what's actually interesting is you can actually over index for even that. Um, the reason that building a startup is hard is actually because of competition. So the best example of this is compare like building a restaurant to building a startup. Building a successful startup is, most people would say, is obviously harder than building a successful restaurant, right? There's way more successful restaurants around than there are successful startups. So why would it be hard to build a successful startup when you build something that inherently can be used by anyone in the world, right? So like, why would it be hard to find a group of people all around the world who are willing to use your startup? And the reason for that is competition. So something where anyone in the world can use you is also something where anyone in the world can compete with you. And there's this saying of tragedy of the commons. As spaces get more and more competitive, it becomes harder and harder to build in them and stand out. And that's what makes building a startup so hard. So what you do find sometimes when you take a niche and you take it to its extreme and you really tackle it for longer than you think you need to, is people start copying you in those adjacent spaces that you're planning on launching into later, and that it can actually be a little difficult to launch into them. And that's kind of why startups raise funding and have high expenses, is now all of a sudden they need to do a ton of marketing to convince and a ton of product development to become the best platform in that space that people started copying them in and that they're now second movers into. So it's a very interesting dynamic. It's just the way things go, though. I mean, if building a startup was easy, everyone would do it, right? So
Right. Yeah.
I would
I think
probably encourage you to again go all in on either the tech or maybe the founder space, maybe even in just the Toronto space. I mean, if people want to sign up from outside the city, that's cool. They can do that. But maybe considering going all in here. So what
Yeah,
we
that
did is we started with, go ahead.
no, sorry, I was just gonna say that part we're already basically focused on Toronto.
Yeah.
All
So
our
tell people
targeting
that, right? Say it
yeah,
on your website. We on our website first could just called ourselves like Toronto Drop in Volleyball, and then Toronto Volleyball, and then Ontario Volleyball, and now we're Canada Volleyball, and soon we'll be North America Volleyball. Um, that's kind of been our progress is just very clearly telling people like, yeah, we're for you,
yeah,
um, for the right people, because we want to be disqualifying people who we're not for. I think that's really important because people will only try things once, right? Like back to my restaurant example, you'll only go to a restaurant once. If for whatever reason that particular night, that particular chef burns that one particular order that you made and you get it on your plate and you eat that burnt food and you're like, wow, this is bad. To you, this restaurant sucks. You're never going back. It's a bad restaurant. You might leave it a 1-star review. I mean, that's just your customers' experiences. Is they don't change their mind on something, even if like, if they initially sign up for you for, I don't know, event discovery, and then really you're focused on tech, and then later they come, you expand into what they do and you start trying to market to them, they'll still have in their mind like, no, 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 that product sucks, and they'll never change their mind. That's just the way things go. So
yeah. What was your so like what were your biggest channels for where you acquired users or customers? Because I'm curious, did they all go through the website or
so
like some other sort of
by
path?
far, our biggest channel is word of mouth. By far. People just tell their friends about what we're doing. And building something that's good enough to get word of mouth is super important. So, in the consumer novel space, the novel consumer space, that's how you grow. Outside of that, when we're launching in new cities, we'll set up Facebook and Instagram groups. Well, a Facebook page and then an Instagram group, and we'll just use a very simple strategy on Facebook where we kind of post about some of the games we're hosting, and we'll run them half price. And then we'll follow a bunch of people interested in volleyball in the city that we're launching in and on Instagram. Right. Pretty simple strategy. Just get some initial people out. Um, Once we kind of get our initial games going, we have this saying, good games grow. We will lose We'll lose about 90% of our players who sign up and try a game, but about 10% stick around for forever. So, I mean, to set up an initial community, it's like 180 people we need to set up one 18-person game for forever. As we find those 18 people who are like, yeah, I like playing volleyball like this. I like the way that this is how you can stay active and socialize and everything. And then if we can hit that number over time, that's okay. We have this sticky game, and then things just start growing through word of mouth.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Um, I wonder what like YC would say about like the tarpit idea and how whether or not how it applies to things that we built or built. So, you
So,
know,
well, they don't believe in the retention of this type of platform because a lot of people actually they say they want event discovery, but really what they want is they want you to show them one thing that they then just start doing for the rest of their life. Because a lot of people actually like comfort.
right.
Um, so for you, you introduce people to a cool event or community. They then join that event or community and then churn from your platform. That's kind of what you see. Um, this is, I guess, it's interesting. This dynamic is talked about a lot in the dating app space. If dating apps were successful, then no one would use dating apps because they'd meet someone and then churn. So, yeah, I mean, there's some people who like use the apps, but they don't actually like, or they don't actually take them seriously outside of just liking to swipe on the apps, right? And
Yeah.
because that group exists, dating apps can be a thing.
I think
Um,
that's one of the reasons that the founder and, like, tech market and business-focused market is so good because it's not as much about community, it's not as much about, like, I guess, finding a fun activity, but it's more about, what are you, like, on the constant lookout for new customers, for new, investors, because you wanna keep making those relationships. You wanna
yeah.
keep, looking out for those opportunities, and that's one of the reasons I think that market is so interested in something like this, and, like, the biggest user of our product is, like, people looking for it for some business reason, not for, personal reasons.
No,
Uh,
yeah, you have to keep networking as a founder. I
right.
mean, it was Tech Week last week. I went to 3 events a day for the entire week. Even though, like, realistically, most startup founders probably, especially ones that I'll meet at, like, just open free events are typically a lot more early stage than I am, right? So, the the point though is you meet one person maybe over the entire week that makes the entire thing worth it for you. So yeah, you have to keep networking as a founder. So yeah, I think that is actually a really good community for you, and you need to build around retention. You can't build around getting people to use your product once. You have to build around retention. So we actually use a lot of onboarding friction with the Javelin app. Like, we actually make it hard for people to sign up because we want to find really high intent players who are serious about being part of our community and serious about playing volleyball through us. That essentially helps ensure that, most people at our games right now, so at your average Javelin game, somewhere around like 92 to 93% of players are regulars. So about 92, 93% of our bookings are from existing customers. So it's a really, really sticky product you find and we built, which has allowed us to build something pretty big and impactful. Uh,
For a group like that, why don't they use something like Meetup?
um, Volleyball games are hard to organize.
Okay.
You need 12 players of a similar skill level on an indoor court, and then you need to split payments. Meetup can't really handle skill level. Meetup can't handle like the right cancellation knowledge for like based on what you need for like volleyball events. And Meetup doesn't handle payments as well as we do. Because again, everything's designed for volleyball. Uh, and our product is designed for people who play volleyball regularly too. Like Meetup, you'll see people, especially on Luma. And I mean, our Tech Week event that we hosted was on Luma, right? It was a volleyball, Toronto Tech Week volleyball on Luma. We didn't host it on our platform because our platform's not designed for that type of event or those types of people, right? People who just want to try out volleyball. Our platform's for people who want to play volleyball regularly. So, I mean, all of our games are weekly and people can, like auto sign up to them where it automatically adds them each week. So we've designed it and we could do all of this because we specifically focused exclusively on drop-in volleyball. If we tried doing all types of volleyball events, then none of our volleyball events would have been any good and people wouldn't have used any of them. So we built just a drop-in volleyball system. And now we're building an entirely new system for tournaments, right? An entirely new system for clinics. Um, so we can do all of that because we knew early on we had to focus on a very specific type of event for a very specific type of person. Uh,
Yeah, cool. Because the reason I asked is because I was part of a board games group on Meetup. Um, and yeah, that one was also, like, mostly irregulars. People would, come very, very often. So I was curious, like, what sort of drove the retention, um, in your case for
I mean,
specifically volleyball?
like the people who are showing up to your board games, probably consistency isn't as important as it would be for volleyball. Um, because with volleyball, like there's specific positions that people play. Skill level matters a lot. If the skill level variance is too great, rallies stop taking place, and people like rallies when they're playing volleyball. They don't like it if, you know, every serve just hits the ground, or some persons just can't be stopped at the net. So the team's just kind of getting crushed the entire entire game. No one likes that, right? So we could build something that makes the players and the level more consistent than what you can get from other platforms. So then players just stick to our platform.
Yeah, that's interesting. You found a very specific niche that they didn't essentially like spend the right time perfecting for, and that's why it's done
Yeah.
so well.
Yes. So that's what I encourage in this space, is to start with a niche, to go all in on that until you like completely own the niche to the point where you have like a brand behind it, and you can meet people. Like I meet people all the time who are Javelin users, right? So people talk about us, right? And I'll hear people talking about us in public, right? So you kind of get your product to that kind of level of being branded. And that's when you can start building the other stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that sort of also like makes me think about the channels, right? Because like specific users are on specific channels, and so far, all of our sort of marketing, not paid marketing, but like you know content creation and like marketing has been on LinkedIn.
yeah. I was gonna
Because
say LinkedIn for founders is big.
yeah, exactly, because like where the founders are, right? But I've recently been trying Instagram because I'm like, this is a much, bigger sort of market here, and it's very tempting to to go and try that. And plus, if we want to scale LinkedIn, it's really hard to scale because you either like do it organically or you pay a lot for
Mhm.
the CPM. LinkedIn has a very high CPM. Um,
Scale scale through your customers, right? Like give them such a great experience that they tell everyone about you. That's how you scale in this space. Um, and I mean, also too, I think if you host events, that's cool as well. If you guys wanted to partner up with us, host some volleyball games for founders, that's fun. Uh,
yeah,
yeah,
sure. Let's volleyball for founders, the Scouty plus Javelin partnership.
no, I'm always down. For full like, yeah, I'd be more than willing to host. I'm always down to run them. There's grass volleyball, beach volleyball, indoors, like so many different ways for people to play.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah, that sounds interesting. So far, um, my event hosting experience it was very successful in terms of like getting users and stuff, but it was also a lot of work. So I'm wondering whether this is like the right way to scale, or how can essentially how can we grow much bigger with like much less time?
yeah.
Because there's a lot.
Volleyball. Okay, volleyball events are easy for us to run, right? Because we're professionals. We know exactly what to do. I'm actually a game host on Javelin, so I'm literally hosting a game tonight. Um, so we have a good system for it, and that's the thing that's very tough. You'll find is kind of balancing between something that's like automated enough that it's easy to do consistently, but something that's impressive enough that people like. That's very hard in the event space. And we'll see that a lot of the times on our end is like a lot of people will try to be like, oh, we can, beat what Javelin does, right? We're going to come in and undercut them on pricing and, have like professional photography and give out snacks and like do all this crazy stuff that's just like you're clearly losing money on. And they'll do that and they'll get some players out initially. And then same thing as they eventually start losing money on that, they try to then convert themselves to provide more just consistent games. And usually they can't really keep up with our platform at that point. Um, so yeah, it's an interesting dynamic for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I think like this is one of the sort of also, I guess, reasons that people, maybe target markets that are like not as niche. And potentially for one of the reasons that they fail. But I also think it's partially is also the fact that they don't build in the other thing that you talked about, retention, and they sort of like um, build with like a lot of complexity for that early user.
Yeah.
Um, this event
And you can
space.
also
Oh, no,
one
go
thing
ahead.
that I encourage founders to in the early stage as well is try to build a bit of a relationship with your customers. Like send them a big email blast. Say like, "Hey, I'm the founder. Like, thank you so much for using our product. If you want to have a 30-minute chat with me to like give me feedback, please like let me know and we'll book one. I really appreciate you trying us out." Like you can do
Yeah,
stuff like that with your current user base. It's like really effective. And that is one of the things that you can do to turn them all into insane advocates for what you're building.
yeah. You know what's been pretty insane? The people who like found it really good, really useful, and then they were like so impressed that they didn't just like tell other people, but they came to me as power users and were like, "Can I be a co-founder for this?"
Yeah.
Like, "I love your product so much. Can I be a co-founder?"
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's
and
a
then
good sign that you found PMF, or at least early signs of it. If your customers are asking to be join your team, become founders, invest in your product, like when you start hearing all of that stuff,
yeah,
I've heard that both, like all of that from my two successes, my two, I guess, major successes that I've had.
right, yeah, that's really, you know, awesome to hear. Um, but yeah, like, I built in terms of like relationships, I ended up having calls, with these people. We met multiple times as well sometimes in some cases. And like, they're kind of like advocates for the product now as well. Not co-founders, but co-founder matching by the way is like the hardest problem ever. But yeah, that's been like one of the coolest things for me to see. Um, and one of these people, she met me actually at an event. We ran into each other. I didn't know she was a user. Turned out she was like one of the biggest power users. Um, but one of the first things she says to me is like, "You lied to me." I'm like, "Wait, what? What did I lie about?" And it was apparently Scouty claiming capabilities he didn't have. But but yeah, that like that the complaint stuff, the interest in like joining the team, the interest in helping out, whatever, that stuff is like the best, I think,
Hmm.
as like signals, and also as like as a founder to hear.
Yeah. And one thing you can do too, um, a lot of it's about like showing off your community too and making it look really great. So one thing you could do too is show up to like events that a lot of, let's say, Scouty people are at, and then just take a really simple like iPhone photo. You can use the portrait mode so that it looks really high quality, and then just upload that to your Instagram page. Like met some amazing people at met some amazing people through Scouting at this event, stuff like that. Like thank you for being part of our community. You'll find like that type of content really does well, as people really like being part of a community. They think it's super cool being showcased on your page, and it
Yeah.
makes people want to be part of it too.
We actually, if you check our LinkedIn page, we actually have been reposting a ton of posts, from people who've been going to events. And like LinkedIn is so perfect for this because it naturally sort of attracts these kinds of posts from people that, hey, I went to this event or whatever. And like a lot of times, Scouties in them are like, uh, I am in them with my Scouty t-shirt. And, we're all basically like tagging each other as well. And that sort of like naturally does this very well for us, sort of make people feel part of the community. And with the Scouting mascot, I don't know if you've seen it. That's another thing that's been really successful at doing this.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
recognizable for sure.
yeah, exactly.
Um, no, I definitely remember seeing it around.
Yeah, there's like yeah, it's everywhere these days. It's like on some on other people's LinkedIn content as well. It just like we sometimes don't even expect it, and we sometimes see it on other people's content. It's like, oh wow, nice, and then we just repost it. That sort of gives somebody encouragement to do more of this as well.
Yeah. And again, I'd encourage you to you can be very like community led on your end too. If you're just going to these events and snapping a quick pic from people,
Yeah,
it can
100%.
even be candid. It doesn't have to be something where you pull everyone together. Just a really nice event photo. They go a long way.
Yeah.
Um, okay, we are over time. Do you have any other questions or anything you'd want to bring up?
Um. No. I guess like we didn't get a chance to discuss a ton of controversial stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what's our controversial thing. You got to be a little mean. That's it, right?
Yeah,
um,
honestly, I 100% agree, but it's like really hard for me to sort of
yeah,
act on this personally.
I
Uh,
think. Well, it's hard for most founders because I think to build a good product, you have to be a pretty empathetic person. Like the act of building a good product is so difficult. Like you have to be constantly putting yourself in the shoes of your customers and seeing, what they do, how they interact with it, what they like, what they dislike, and kind of constantly building along this vision. And then you have to constantly be adding new things that you just know won't destroy what you're currently doing. Um, One of
yeah.
the paradoxes of being a founder, though, is well, building a good product requires a lot of empathy. Doing good marketing and doing good sales, that kind of requires you to just be a sociopath, right? I mean, that's the whole other side of the spectrum where you're kind of just like manipulating people into using your platform. Requires a completely different mindset, a completely different type of person. And that is actually one of the reasons that building a startup is so hard is you kind of had the main one founder whose vision it is, and maybe they'll be more sales driven or maybe they'll be more product driven. One of actually the reasons that the startup scene is so obsessed with sales and marketing is it's significantly easier and it's generally more successful for founders to find a sales and marketing focused person,
Hmm.
right? Someone with, again, probably less empathy with that somehow managed to find a good product, right? Somehow they did it. And then just give them a shit ton of money and trust them to manipulate a ton of people into using their product. On the flip side, if you're looking for someone who's has a great product and is very empathetic, and then you give them a ton of money and say, all right, now go market to people, they'll be like, oh, but like, do I want to be like, annoying people with like cold calls? And do I want to be, doing all this stuff? Which is tough. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of a very common startup success story that you'll hear this a lot is people are like, it's not the early movers who are successful. Like, look at all these big examples of products that were second movers to the space and now are the big billion-dollar companies. Essentially, what their founders did is they just copied some existing successful product that some probably very empathetic person made, and then they just marketed the hell out of it and blew it up. So,
Yeah, I actually have like so much to say about this,
yeah.
because I know someone who's that sort of sociopath founder.
Right, you meet a lot of them in the startup space. Yeah, you meet a
And like,
lot.
yeah, they did exactly that. Like, copy that part, the existing products, and just like sell the hell out of it. Complete sociopath, almost like to the level of frauding people, if not frauding people. Um, and and yeah, to some level, I think they were like pretty successful with it. Um, but at a certain point, like if you take that to the extreme, I think like it can end up in like a really bad situation as well. Um,
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a lot of the Forbes 30
yes,
under 30 founders who are in prison now.
yeah,
Um, so I mean, I'm not trying to say like, defraud people and stuff. But you just got to embrace that, to run a successful sales and marketing campaign, like you got to be a little manipulative, right? And tell people what they want to hear instead of trying to be authentic, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
just the
No,
way things are.
I got sold things that didn't exist. by like these exact
Hey,
exact
you're already doing it, right? So you're almost there.
yeah. Yeah, a lot of the stuff on my website now doesn't exist yet, like the pricing stuff you mentioned,
Yeah,
but it is supposed to exist, and it's like, at least it's feasible.
right.
Um, and I do expect it to exist soon. That was like a completely different situation. But anyways, like there's like I think this is why being a solo founder is also so hard because you're trying to play both roles, have that empathy and have that sociopath sort of personality at the same time. And that's really hard. You almost have
Yes.
to be bipolar.
It's
uh
excruciatingly difficult. There's a reason that, first off, good founders are rare and hard to find. And second off, they're fucking weird usually. Like a lot of the top founders are pretty eccentric because inherently, like people who are kind of like other people just don't find success in this space.
Right, yeah, exactly, and then, like, I was trying to bring on a co-founder for this exact reason, and, like, the first person that I mentioned, I was briefly, I wouldn't call it a co-founder, but, like, briefly experimenting with, um, I realized through that experimentation, like, she was supposed to be the growth person, the marketing person, the salesperson, and I just told her, like, "You don't it's it's not a skill issue, but you just, like, don't have that don't give a shit sort of personality." But you've sort of put a better word to it, which is like a sociopath personality. I told her you're too nice.
Yeah.
Um, and, and it's I can like you can, do have a little bit of success with that, but, ultimately I'm really, looking for that kind of person. So, like, if one of the viewers is a sociopath, maybe
Yeah.
reach out.
I mean, a lot of the times, like even just the stress from building up your initial product
Yeah,
and putting so much risk into it, oftentimes that can harden founders in the right way that can turn them into good sales and marketing people later on in their career. Um,
interesting,
so that can work too. Um,
interesting. I guess it depends on, like, how like, what your childhood was like, maybe.
yeah, true. Um, but yeah, anyway, we should probably wrap it up because we are getting over time. Yeah, any final comments or things you want to shout out before we do?
Um, no, I think this is great. No
Nice.
final comments from me. If you don't already use Scouty, yeah, maybe check out meetscouty.com
Why
where
don't you spell out your website for everyone just so they know?
yeah, so just like the word meet, when you meet people, not the meat that you eat, uh, and then Scouty, so Scouty, and then .com.
All right. Thank you so much.
Alright, great to be here. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.